following two eulogies for judges is not an enviable position, but I have the honor and privilege of remembering one of the finest lawyers who ever walked these halls and courtrooms. I'm woefully inadequate to describe the life and times of David Allen Hughes during his distinguished 50-year legal career. It's especially challenging to compress 50 years of excellence into 5 or 10 minutes. So please indulge me. I would offer the following comments concerning David. He was born in Bunkie of Wells Parish, Louisiana on January 17, 1940. And he died on Sunday, May 22nd, 2016 in Alexandria, where he made his home after 1965. David is survived by his legal spouse, Mary Alexandria Hughes, who shared almost 23 years of marriage with him. Although they met in the 3rd grade in Vidalia, after graduation from high school, they went their separate ways. And many years later, Mary became his best friend, his wife, his secretary, and professional assistant during the last 22 years of his practice. Mary was his constant companion and partner when he became a sole practitioner in the year 2009. She greatly enriched his professional life for many years, and up to and until he retired from the active practice in the year 2015. David is also survived by his wonderful and productive children, Michelle Hughes Hutchins. Michelle has a master's degree in education. Melissa Hughes Albert. Melissa has a PhD in psychology. Heather Hughes Buckner, who has a degree from Southeastern Louisiana University and became a radiology technician. And finally, his son, David Jr., who is a PhD in molecular anthropology. I spent all night trying to learn how to say that, and I still don't know what it means. But I'm certain, as with the other children, it means he has a keen intellect and he's a very smart person. In that way, he was much like his father. David was also survived by 2 stepchildren, Kelly Carpenter Escamilla and Todd Carpenter. David's educational background included a degree from Louisiana Tech University in 1961 and the LSU School of Law in 1964. He loved history, and in particular our country's history, and he was a great teacher of that history to his children. He also loved the law. He had the utmost respect for the judicial system and would not tolerate anyone wishing to perpetuate a fraud or receipt upon the court. His practice began in Faraday with Lloyd Love and then moved to Alexandria in 1965, where he practiced with the firm of Gist, Method, and Trimble, which later became Gist, Method, Hughes, and Munsterman. In the year 2000, he formed a partnership with Paul LaFleur, which was known as Hughes and LaFleur, and he practiced with Paul until the year 2009, when he became a sole practitioner. During his outstanding professional life, among his many accomplishments were serving as the president of the Young Lawyers Association and being a recipient of the Alexandria Bar Association Considicus Award in the year 2007. And we've all heard much about that today, and we have a very worthy recipient, Darrell, for that honor. Now, with your permission and indulgence, I would relate to you why David Allen Hughes received that award. Honor, integrity, and humility were the most important aspects of his practice. David was the Will Rogers of the Alexandria Bar Association. He never met a young lawyer he didn't like, and he never missed an opportunity to help or mentor an inexperienced young lawyer. I would venture to say, with myself and several others in here, there are probably 5 or 10 people in here that David mentored or helped at some point. This was his true gift, and he did it over and over again without calling attention to himself, very quietly and very efficiently, which is something to be very admired in my opinion. consummate professional gentleman. In any situation, inside or outside the courtroom, he was never compelled to raise his voice in anger or for attention. Rather, he obtained everyone's attention by being prepared, thorough, and knowledgeable about the case or subject matter. It is known that on rare occasions he would become vigorously aggressive when he believed fraud or deceit was being practiced on the court. I never saw that. I don't think many people did, but it did happen. Unlike some defense attorneys, David never made it a goal to deny an injured plaintiff compensation. His goal was to ensure that both the plaintiff and the defendant received justice. His opponents respected him greatly for that characteristic. As a lawyer, he gave respect to everyone in the system, from the highest-ranking judge to the most inconsequential witness. He never failed to deliver respect. In this way, he elevated courtroom demeanor, because if David Hughes was a defense attorney, everyone involved in the case stepped up their game. Be more prepared, be more professional, be more dignified. Because if you fail to do so, you were bound to be embarrassed, not by David himself, but by the legal environment that you found yourself in. And if by chance that happened, the first person to console you would be David Hughes. As many of you know, David also had a wonderful, somewhat low-key, dry sense of humor. He could bring levity to a serious situation with the greatest of ease. He had a smile. It always began with a smile, became bigger, a little chuckle, and every once in a while you get a big belly laugh. But he was so great to be around, and I can remember this little personal diversion, probably 30 years ago when we were having lunch, and I was commiserating about the fact that my wife and I had both received speeding tickets in St. Landry Parish, 60 miles an hour in a 55, 62 in a 55, things you don't see a lot of anymore. And while I'm whining, I see this little smile creeping across his face, and it gets bigger and bigger, and finally I said, "What are you smiling about?" He said, "Well, I got one of those too last weekend." I said, "Well, how did that happen?" He said, "Well, I piled my whole family in the car, and we were going to Vidalia for a long weekend with the family." He said, "I was traveling on 28 east, and I came around a curve, and I saw a state trooper there with the radar, and I knew he'd bing me right away." He said, "I thought, you know what, I'm going 63. If he gives me 10, I'm okay." He said, if he doesn't, it's a done deal, right?" So he goes on, he looks back in the rearview mirror, the blue lights come on, the state trooper pulls him over, and he's writing the ticket, and David's sitting there, and he can't stand it. So he says, "Well, you know, I thought you might give me 10 miles an hour like I thought was the general rule of thumb." And the state trooper said, "Well, I would have." He said, "But you went by me and never touched your brakes. You gave me no respect." What I want to tell you is that was the one time in David's life he could give somebody respect, because his mantra was you respected everyone. Some comments from our colleagues will give you the essence of this man. Gay Coleman wrote after the funeral, "I learned a great deal from David. I admired him for his professionalism." Johnny Martin, who's retired now and lives out of state, wrote, "In the trial practice arena where contentious situations often get the best of us, David remained the consummate professional. In my first trial, when I was opposed by David, I made many rookie mistakes, but David treated me with respect, an experience I never forgot." Chris Roy Sr. wrote, "David had the unique quality of appearing very comfortable and sedate in his great advocacy. He was one of our premier lawyers. There are too few lawyers of David's caliber and integrity practicing today." Greg Wampler also wrote, "David was a consummate lawyer in terms of professionalism, competence, ethics, and personal courtesies. David did not take advantage of me when he could have, due to an issue caused by my inexperience in the first year of practice, which would have resulted in great professional embarrassment to me. Instead, he he extended a professional and personal hand to me and advised me how to correct the situation. He demonstrated to me how I should deal with other less experienced lawyers. How many of us have had that experience with David Hughes? In closing, let me please tell you that in my first year of practice in 1975, I had the same experience with David. He was opposing counsel, and I very quickly realized that he was a lawyer that I wanted to emulate. And over the last 40 years, nothing has changed. He was my friend, a mentor, a colleague, and I never stopped learning from him. Now as I go forward, my hope is when my day is done, someone will say he was emulating David Allen Hughes, Sr. Your Honors, may it please the court, I ask that these reflections be entered into the minutes of the 9th